Look around you. What do you see? Perhaps your room with a cluttered desk and an unmade bed. Or the grocery store flooded with shoppers. Regardless of what you see, this is your community. Everyone may have different valid perspectives, but we each honor a piece of ourselves and the environment in our own unique way through either what we wear, how we speak, or what we do. Some people do this through art.
And so today, we will explore artists from all over Southeast Texas, as well as a few from out of state, who have commemorated this community through their artwork.
Sharing a piece of themselves and simultaneously providing a memo to everyone here locally, they foster this blossoming area of Texas and uplift the eccentric eventualities of people, history, and wildlife that make it what it is currently.
So what's the big deal with art in the community anyway? How does art uplift anything? Well, firstly, art is one of the most fundamental ways we as humans express ourselves.
Going way back to the Stone Age, humans would even pay tribute to the star formations and hunting game through celestial cave art drawings. Art is even described by Dr. Pamela Kirst, a clinical psychologist, as a human indulgence and a medium for describing emotions that cannot quite be depicted through wordage or verbal speech. Art is also known to trigger and exercise certain psychological and behavioral skills that are essential for daily life. Some of the artists we are going to discuss use photography, mixed media, oil painting, digital print, and even wood.
All around the community, these artists plant memorials per se that promote further positive thought. So let's dive into the specific contributions of these artists and what they choose to celebrate.
People. We are a big contributor into what makes the Golden Triangle so special. The following artists, who they themselves bring uniqueness to Southeast Texas, honor others who put this land on the map and aid in the establishment of a deep relationship between communal and personal identity. Beginning his fine arts photography career at the young age of 19, Keith Carter has made an international name for himself, becoming a local celebrity within the city of Beaumont. Though he was born in 1948 and lived in Madison, Wisconsin until the age of 5, he has certainly adopted Beaumont as his home. Described as a poet of the ordinary, Carter integrates aspects of his environment and portrays them in a simple yet graceful, fleeting manner. Capturing Southern themes, elements of Black American communities, and animal motifs in black and white frame, he brings forth sensual comfort to his photographs and emphasizes the fragility of life altogether.
With no formal education in art, Carter has a business management degree from Lamar University. Additionally, he states that it took more than 20 years to grasp his style and voice in the photography world, often gaining inspiration from his studies in New York City.
Nonetheless, however, he has reaped bounding success, with his exhibitions being displayed in 13 countries and earning accolades from the Lang Taylor Prize from Duke University to the Texas Medal of Arts in 2009, among many more. Today, Mr. Keith Carter is the Regents Professor and the Endowed Wallace Chair of Arts at Lamar University, and recently opened the Keith Carter 50 Years exhibition at the Dishman Art Museum.
Before I go any further on Mr. Carter's work, let's get to know photography as an art medium itself.
Firstly, photography translates to drawing with light, and it is the act of recording light by electronic, digital, or film means to create an image. Adjusting the wavelengths of visible light, lens, or type of device or camera, an artist can manipulate a situation and portray it in a representational, realist form. With its versatility, photography is dependent only upon the vision and detail put forth by the artist. Although the first photograph was taken around 1826, the use of similar visual aid technology has been used for centuries prior, including appliances such as the camera lucida and the camera obscura. Especially during the late 20th century and the turn of the 21st century, photography is widely embraced as a medium of art, but that has not always been the case.
Photography was almost considered to be cheating per se in the 19th century in Europe, as it does not require the mastery of certain skills that sculpting and painting does.
However, with early pioneers such as Henri Cartier-Bresson and Man Ray with his introduction of the rayographs, the public perspective gradually began to evolve. Now, photographers are highly regarded in the art world and play a huge role in the documentation of human history. Keith Carter himself has utilized a 1950 Deirdre camera and a small Hawkeye, otherwise known as the Brownie Flash, for many of his photographs. He now uses a digital Canon 5DS.
One of the works we're going to explore today honors a Beaumont local who is also an artist. Entitled Box Bears Beaumont, Carter broadcasts the personality of a sprightly visionary who found an outlet in what others would call a mound of garbage.
Currently displayed in the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, Texas, this moderately small photograph is black and white in color, a trademark of Carter, and is dependent upon different tones and values of light to emphasize the ruggedness of Harris's sculpture, yet the subtle pride in his figure. It is printed on gelatin silver print and possesses a certain pleasant antiquity. Released in 1987, this photograph reflects the underlying culture and common themes of Carter's style. With Beaumont being the main source of his inspiration, he broadcast African mythology present in Harris's art which is found all over the southern United States and other collections. With mysterious undertones, the deep implications of this piece emanate the personality of Felix Fox Harris. Born in Trinity, Texas in 1905, Felix Harris grew up extremely diligent, especially as an illiterate African American in a terribly segregated society. However, there was an opposite side to him, indicated early on in his childhood by the bestowment of the nickname Fox. Though falling into trying times as a hard laborer and eventually developing alcoholism, he turned his life around after receiving a fresh start from God himself, who appeared to him in a dream. Henceforth, Harris began constructing his massive sculpture comprised of everyday items in what would seemingly appear to be just trash. However, carrying the notion that he himself was reborn along with a butter knife and a ball-peen hammer, he granted these disgraced items a second chance to represent his greater expressions. Working for almost 25 years, Harris amassed totem pole structures laced with motifs of his past, beliefs, and new aspirations. After passing away in 1905, his work was donated to the Southeast Texas Art Museum, today and forever holding a reminder of this local folk pioneer. Although the subject of Mr. Carter's work was another symbol of local art history, artist Jamie Gonzalez takes a different approach to honoring community members. She celebrates her own individuality. Crystal Beach, born and raised, Gonzalez moved to Beaumont later in life and has tapped into this emerging creative cesspool with her paintings. Earning an associate degree in general education from Lamar University, she shares her self-taught talents as an instructor at Painting with a Twist paint studio in Beaumont, Texas. She has currently made a name for herself, earning the 2011 Best at Show Award and the 2010 Gold Medal at the Houston Livestock Show. With 22 years of painting experience, she has recently decided to get, quote, a big girl job for the future, but plans to become a high school art teacher in retirement.
But let's talk about mixed media and the specific materials that Gonzalez uses in her work.
Firstly, mixed media is used to describe artwork that utilizes different materials in its composition. This means that something as simple as the usage of different types of ink or the integration of paper and paint both on a single canvas. However, mixed media relatively is a modern form of art, as the beginnings of the synthetic cubism movement saw artists, namely Pablo Picasso, creating collages and assembled pieces using materials from paper to wire in order to emphasize artistic form over emotional sentiment and expression. This stark cry from traditional art forms paved the way for 20th century abstractum and contemporary strides taken today by artists like Miss Gonzalez. She specifically prefers the combination of latex and acrylic paint. Though similar, acrylic paint was invented in the mid-20th century, as it has a synthetic polymer binder and water as a vehicle. This allows for the rapid drying time and mostly permanent stain. Latex, previously used as rubber as a base, currently is built on water and acrylic resin, like acrylic paint. The combination of these two media allow for less cracking on the canvas and a greater adaptability to temperature fluctuation, essential for a Southeast Texas painter in my opinion. I was actually able to participate in the class in the studio. During the session, we used acrylic paints as she led the class, allowing for the painting to be completed in one sitting. My painting is nowhere near her technique, but I think it doesn't look too bad.
One of the main ideas I've learned about studying art is that you cannot understand what you see to be the exact message. This piece demonstrates Gonzalez's personal journey through challenges she's encountered in her life. As such a public figure to participants and to other artists in the Beaumont and Painting with a Twist community, this piece celebrates her unwavering will and dedication to her family and future. Though not a representational depiction of an actual being, she establishes the spirit of humanity and as well as herself in symbolic mode.
This piece is depicted on a 4 feet by 4 feet hand-bowled canvas with vibrant color. The implied line between the bright yellow and the somewhat murky, unclear puddle of controlled paint strokes demonstrates the separation between self-desertion and self-confidence. The usage of both dead and live succulent flowers in the vase symbolizes human resilience and her motto, "Come about brighter."
After the class, I caught up with her about her thoughts about art in the community, as well as the relationship between the creator and viewers, to get a first-hand perspective from a local artist.
It can really open up emotions for people who may not feel things. It can spark something in somebody that they may not have ever known. By just looking at a piece of artwork, they can feel maybe what that artist has tried to produce and maybe what that artist was feeling whenever they were painting that picture or sculpting that piece. I do believe that artwork does change the community, and it can speak to the community through any medium.
A major part of who we are is where we have come from. Honoring the past is learning from our mistakes and triumph altogether, and the components that constitute this community are significant in the upbringings of ourselves and the area.
When talking about local history, it's difficult to leave the McFaddens out of the conversation.
D. Vernon McFadden was born in 1879 to William Perry Herring McFadden, WPH, and Margaret Emmeline Janes, Emma, in Beaumont, Texas. Described as peppery and vibrant, Dee had a lot to offer to her art. Educated at the finishing school in Gunston Hall, she continued her life here in southeast Texas and married Lysander Houck, and after his passing, Fayette Leard. Through this time, she painted several pieces, including sets of china, that are displayed in the museum. Though not full-time practicing artist we envision today, she definitely ignited an artistic spark in this southeast Texas industrial community. But today, we're going to focus on and explore one of the oil paintings she created.
Let's talk about oil painting.
This medium involves the suspension of pigment in an oil binder, commonly linseed, in a turpentine vehicle, as water is immiscible. Thus, a slow drying time is associated, but the pigmentations do not fade with time, allowing for Dee's piece, in particular, to appear perfectly preserved. As a common feature of Western art, oil painting could be considered a favorite among artists historically, allowing for the emergences of different techniques. Impasto, often used by Vincent van Gogh, calls for the thick application of oil paint, while others require the thinning of paint with turpentine and the wet-on-dry methodology. Though no record of Diana's approach, it appears she used thinning in her work and completed it over several sessions. However, this piece is also a still life painting, which is an extremely popular style during the Renaissance, capturing simplicity and compositions of items in the common environment. Though appearing mundane and perhaps one-sided, still life retain allegoric qualities reflecting elements of the artist.
As a junior interpreter of the McFadden Woodhouse, I've learned a lot about Beaumont history and the McFadden family. However, Dee McFadden was not a resident of the house we know and love today.
Up until around the oil discovery at Spindletop, they led a humbler lifestyle despite their wealth. Unfortunately, her mother, Emma, passed away in 1890. As a result, WPH married Ida Caldwell, a socialite from Virginia that was visiting the area. Her lavish presence and charitable heart helped propel the family into the community spotlight and eventually into the massive mansion off McFadden Avenue. Of course, there are other factors involved, including the burning of the Avril McFadden home in 1905, but she marked a turning point in their lifestyles. Dee, later called Diana, was an adult at that point, but frequented the residence with her siblings and stayed what was often called the Blue Room. Because Diana did not live in the home, she is not subject of our tours and studies as docents, so I took to the museum archives where I talked to curator Ashlyn Thornton about her life and artwork. Though the McFadden Woodhouse was closed, I was able to venture into the storage facility where the rest of the collection is kept. From Roosevelt jelly jars to ornate furniture, this place could be the museum. However, one of the true beauties of the building was Diana's elegant oil painting.
One of the important ideas to remember with this piece is not the content itself, but the place it holds in the communal historical context relative to the present. Thus, the meaning gathered over time is the primary focus. Though this painting portrays no person or event of relevance, the underlying themes held during its conception and development over the timeline of local and art history is what truly upholds this whole idea of commemoration.
This painting is 39.7 centimeters in height and 49.7 centimeters in width, enclosed in a wooden frame with gold leaf. She employs the usage of flowing yet controlled strokes, along with small picks of the canvas to portray the thorns and branches on the anthers and stigmas within the flowers. The value of the gray negative space is ambiguous to represent shadows. Equipping a still life style, this representational work reflects gentle femininity. Governed in a way by the cult of domesticity, Diana reflects aspects of her womanhood and grace through the inanimate leisure of household flowers. The yellow color additionally sends undertones of subtle empowerment and honor. A Southeast Texas native, Brandi Hamilton takes a more literal approach to historical tribute, honoring the components of her past and small-town childhood beginnings through digital art. While considering herself a Beaumonter, Hamilton began her unintentional trek as an artist in Lamar University as an engineering major, seeking to become an astronaut. As she came to realize it wasn't exactly a fit, she switched to Air Force training in San Antonio and essentially trade school for space operations, as she commanded a weather satellite for her first job.
Eventually, she served for 20 years, earning degrees along the way and eventually becoming Major Brandi Hamilton.
She has since returned to Lamar University to pursue photography and is studying under Professors Keith Carter and Dr. Jim Jordan. She now has exhibitions from Texas to Italy, including No Solid Surface, currently featured at the Art Museum of Southeast Texas Cafe Art Series.
Before I continue, it's important that I break down digital print first.
Printmaking, as an art medium, is the process of transferring images from what is called a matrix to another surface, such as paper. A matrix can vary from an etched block of wood to ones and zeros in electronic form, acting as a guide. Types of printmaking include woodcut, linocut, engraving, etching, lithograph, screen printing, contemporary digital print. Nonetheless, while prints are thought to be first developed in China during the 9th century, the Sumerians of Mesopotamia used engraving methods to produce relief impressions, commonly of cuneiform, their writing system. Their methodology eventually spread throughout Asia and eventually Europe during the 15th century. This is just in time for the Protestant Reformation, where copies of the Holy Bible were able to be mass-produced following the great chaotic rejection of the powerful Catholic Church by separatists. However, artists saw the value in printmaking as a means of expression, with figures such as Utagawa Hiroshige and Elizabeth Catlett paving the way for people like Brandi Hamilton.
But she utilizes a contemporary form of printmaking called chromogenic digital print, or C-print.
Chromogenic, meaning producing color, materials such as film are exposed to red, blue, and green lasers to transpose the digital image. Next, the tangible, light-sensitive surface is developed using silver halide chemicals. This medium was first made commercially available in 1942 by Kodak and has developed exponentially since the implementation and advancement of optical brightening agents through processing chemistry. Additionally, ultraviolet absorbers have improved the light absorbency so that artwork, like Hamilton's, has buoyant, stellar vibrancy.
Throughout the No Solid Surface collection, Brandi Hamilton documents her personal history as a Southeast Texas local in a creative, artistic way, considering the aspects of her military background and deep imaginative relationship with space. She produced imagery of awe that retains references to NOAA and NASA governmental pictures of planets and a satellite she worked on as well.
No solid surface, that's kind of just an incredible metaphor, I think, for where I was at the time, coming out of the military, trying to learn how to be an artist. And I found myself without solid footing and learning how to navigate this new life, which I also found fascinating as well as scary. Uncertainty, if you can become okay with it, you realize that uncertainty is the key to novelty, and you need novelty to feed your curiosity and for creativity.
Displayed in the Art Museum of Southeast Texas, this moderately petite piece is laced with potent color and circular shapes. The collage-like form puts forth a gradient yet celestial texture, simultaneously illustrating spatial depth. Though somewhat asymmetrical arrangement, it possesses inner balance and uniformity. The faint red blotches on the blue space imply humility and even earthly notion. As the last section of this presentation, this is certainly not of least importance. We are not the only locals of Southeast Texas area. The animals, wildlife, and natural environment play a significant role in the building of the Golden Triangle, and they certainly should not remain unmentioned. Born in Iota, Louisiana in 1922, Milam Joseph Raspberry was welcomed to parents Horace Raspberry and Effie Richard. Along with his brother Elroy Buddy J. Raspberry, they later moved to Orange, Texas, where they developed deep roots with the Golden Triangle. He eventually returned to his home to attend Southwestern Louisiana Institute. Not too long afterward, however, he joined the United States Navy to serve in World War II. Following the war, he eventually married Mary Sybil Chestnut and had 2 sons. He was an engineer at DuPont until he retired and began creating wood sculpture in the woodshop behind his home. His work was even displayed at the Stark Museum of Art around the year 1997. As his great-granddaughter, I think it is amazing to have an artist in the family. Though I was never able to meet him, his artistic legacy makes me feel all the closer to him. Surprisingly enough, it was extremely difficult to find pictures of him or further information concerning his work. I even got in touch with Dr. Sarah Beam, the curator, but there was little record of him. So I ventured to his historical library to study up on wood sculpture to help identify the key components of his artwork.
Let's get to it.
Wood as a medium is extremely versatile, but Raspberry creates wooden sculpture using a whittling technique. This is the process of carving done by shaving small slices, often using widely available materials and tools. Whittling itself is an extremely prominent art form in the United States historically, although wooden sculpture is one of the oldest forms of art, as the notorious sugar idol piece dates back to the Mesolithic period. Nonetheless, in terms of this specific technique, whittling was extremely popular in America during the mid-19th to mid-20th centuries. As a pocket knife, a popular tool among soldiers during the Civil War, was the equivalent of your wallet and keys. A loose school of whittling emerged, with common men across the U.S. creating folk art free of academic accolade or pursuits. Thus, organizations such as the Scouts BSA, the Boy Scouts of America Timely, became popular as tradition was passed down. Whittling also is a staple during the Great Depression, inciting the spirit of rugged individualism, as many were forced to become extremely resourceful, with some trading hobo art for sustenance. Growing up during this period, my great-grandfather became a part of this great American and Southeast Texas tradition.
With over 350 different inhabiting bird species in these Southeast Texas prairies and marshes, my great-grandfather had a lot of inspiration for his work. However, he chose the nostalgic yet simple form of the duck.
These petite wooden ducks measure 5.75 inches in length, 2 inches in height, and 2.5 inches in width. With a combination of winding and straight grain, the pecan wood brings a golden Texas hue to the sculptures. According to family members, he has large pecan trees in his backyard. The freestanding form and the flat bottom allow for the illusion that the art is swimming, similar to the stance taken by birds in the water. Though very alike, the small imperfections emanate a sense of industrious hand. The pairing of the two sculptures as well portrays a sense of comfort to the viewer.
As I studied the work of these gifted individuals who have commemorated the community through their artwork, I realized the importance of communication between the artist and the observer. When deeply examining the works of Keith Carter to D. Bernie McFadden, one understands the intent of commendation. However, what would happen if that understanding is lost? When is there no longer reference?
Well, you've seen it. Memorials, works of art honoring Confederate figures among other affiliates are being taken down here in Southeast Texas. A number of sculptures, including the one in Weiss Park in Beaumont, were removed. Erected by Albert Sidney Johnston, his motivations were not out of hate, but in honor of valor. So why isn't this properly translated? Well, as I've mentioned throughout this presentation, art holds a greater place and meaning in local history and in the court of public opinion. Despite of what it has become is dependent upon the underlying associated symbolism. Erica Doss, a professor at the University of Notre Dame, explains that when investigating the Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial in Duluth, Minnesota, one that honors the victims of a lynching event that occurred in 1920. Recognizing the cultural shifts in the country, as well as the dismemberment of systems that oppress Black citizens, public art is seen as a marker of societal progress. While not remaining negligent to these painful moments of the past, these works must stray away from the idolization and focus rather on the idea of social restoration as a whole. Thus, these statues represent a time in American history that is not equivalent to the ideology of today.
While this is considered a controversial issue, it is imperative that we participate in the objective observation of all elements in a matter of interest, as there is always another side to the story, especially when it comes to the study of art in the community.
Southeast Texas proves to be a melting pot of artistic talent and a source of creativity. From the wooden figures sculpted by my great-grandfather to the paintings created by Jamie Gonzalez, all the different traits of the Golden Triangle are positively broadcasted to be enjoyed by others here locally and future generations. Despite what tribulation we have faced and will face, we must celebrate the gifts we have been given and nurture this community like these artists have.
And so, the commemoration of the people, history, and wildlife of the area may start with art, but it continues with you.